Welcome to the Airgun World Podcast, brought to you in association with Crackshot, the Southwest's premier airgun centre and ranges. I'm Matt Manning, and with me I've got my good mate and Airgun World magazine contributor, Rich Saunders. Hi Rich, how you doing?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good. Rich, let's get straight into it now. We generally kick off with a quick update of what we've been up to shooting wise over the past few weeks. How's it been going for you?
Well, you may remember me telling you that not so long ago I picked up a new woodland permission, 86 hectares of ancient woodland. It's lovely. And it kind of came, I thought, it's sort of kind of wrong time of the year, because normally, this is, with the natural harvest out, squirrels tend to ignore peanut feeders. But because I've been asked to shoot on there, I wanted to show winning. So I put some feeders up, put some hides up, and put some trail cameras up. And the trail cameras have just been going non-stop. And I can show you something that's literally just popped in while we've been sat here. And if you can see that, there's a
little
couple
bit closer.
Of...
I can see a squirrel on a tree trunk. Yeah,
couple of squirrels there.
Clear as day.
And my phone's been going off every few minutes with pings from this trail cam. So I thought, well, I better get down and shoot it before they eat all the peanuts. So I've been down 3 times now. The first time I shot 17, the second time 16. The last trip, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, didn't go quite so well, which was mainly down to me. But yeah, it's bizarre. Most of my other squirrel permissions, this time of year, they get a little bit quiet. Beech mast and acorns and everything. But this place, looks like they've never seen a peanut before in their lives, and they're going mad for it. I went on another one of my permissions, a rabbit permission, 2 or 3 nights ago, and that was good. Nice, it's only 8 acres, nice contained field. The guy said to me, "Look, we've got lots of rabbits here." Okay, yeah, whatever. And I went down, and at one point I sat in the bushes, and I counted 26 rabbits. All
quite
over.
a few rabbits.
Yeah, another great permission. Yeah, I just So yeah, that's about it. The usual. I haven't been up doing much ratting recently.
Similarly, the squirrels seem to be going absolutely crazy around the peanut feeders. If they're already costing me a lot, I'm trying to shoot as frequently as work and family permit, but they're getting through a lot of peanuts. I think I mentioned a while ago, didn't I, on the podcast, that one of my shoots, the squirrels were really almost nocturnal. They weren't visiting the bait stations until it was almost completely dark. And after a bit of shooting pressure, which tends to be sort of counterintuitive, you'd have thought that would make them even more skittish. But actually, I'm seeing more there now by daylight as well. I'm seeing fewer squirrels on the whole, because I've shot quite a few now, but their behaviour has changed. And I still don't know why it was that they were so reluctant to come out.
I know you were saying last time you thought it might be a bird of prey or something putting them off.
Yeah, could well have been, and it might be that bird of prey, well, either something's happened to it, or more likely it's found another food source. And I do wonder, there are a lot of pheasants in the woods. Perhaps it's moved on to them. But yeah, it seems to be giving the squirrels a break for now.
Well, I think it might have moved over to my permission, because I had a buzzard come down and try and make off with one of my squirrels. And each time I tried to film it, and of course moved, and it went off. But I caught that on the trail camera as well. Yeah, it's wonderful. I saw it from about where I shoot is I'm on one side of a valley, and there's a big valley, and then there's obviously the other side. And I saw it come from off of a tree about 300 meters away on the other side of the valley. It just swept in towards me and stopped about 15 yards from the hide. Wonderful sight.
Yeah, we caught one on video trying to hit a squirrel on a feeder once. The only reason we got it is because we weren't trying to. We were literally filming from the hide. Squirrel came to the feeder. I wanted to line up on it and take the shot. And as is often the case when you're shooting video, we were being slow because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't missed, in terms of captured on the video. And while we were sort of shuffling around and getting everything as it should be, a buzzard came whooshing in. But unfortunately, it didn't catch the squirrel, because that would have been a hell of a bit of footage to capture. But obviously, it spooked the squirrel and spoiled the shooting opportunity. But it was, interesting to capture it, trying to hunt off the feeder.
Yeah, this was dead ones on the floor, but yeah, I'd love to see one. I've had sparrowhawks whizzing through the woods before, and that's quite a sight, especially quite a dense wood, and they're jinking through the trees.
Plodding on, that's the sort of general catch up. Now, I know last time we chatted about bits of kit that had played a significant part in our recent shooting, or had a bit of an interesting anecdote attached to them. And I know we've both been sent some pellets to try out, and these are, let me get it right because I've got them to hand. They're rifle. There you go. Rifle RTX are the ones I've been using most.
You picked up the green ones, I picked up the blue ones. Look at that.
Okay, well, I thought I'd picked up it might be your screen because these look blue at this end. But anyway, so yeah, rifle pellets from iHunter. I've been mostly using the 177 RTXs, and to give a bit of background, Adrian at iHunter, really nice chap, got in touch and said, I've got these rifle pellets. Reckons the RTX ones, deliver a brilliant pellet at a really competitive price. And I thought, okay. Everybody thinks their pellet is a brilliant pellet at a competitive price. So I'm not going to hold my breath, but send us a few samples. And to be honest, I've been really impressed with them.
He wasn't far wrong, was he? No.
He wasn't far wrong. And I would give the usual caveat that I would always give with ammo, and that is you can't just say, I achieved this with this pellet and this gun, and therefore so will you, because there's a bit more to it than that. But I was running them mostly through my Daystate Huntsman Safari, sub 12 177, and in fact I've got some groups here, and I'll be honest, these are the best ones, but the average ones were pretty much the same. That, if you can see it, 5-shot group at 30 meters off of a bench in pretty much flat calm conditions. So but
with the Revere, that is.
Yes, yeah. And same again, 40 meters. As I said, I've picked the best, but the run of the mill was pretty much along those lines. I scribbled it to, that was 11 millimeters center to center. You can see those little squares are 10 mil.
And is that with the heavy ones or the light ones?
That was, what was the ones I've just... It was the 8.3 grain. I think they're 4.51 mil head size.
So that's the heavy ones, because they do.
They call them heavy, yeah.
Yeah, there's a heavy 8.3 grains, 8.33. Then there's a medium, which is 7.87. So
right.
An awful lot between them.
No, and I suppose that gives you an even finer tolerance for fine tuning. But no, I mean, going by those results, I'd have no hesitation using them through that particular gun for live quarry. And looking at those groups, it looks like they could have competition pedigree too.
Yeah. Well, I know that they do some, because I chatted with Adrian as well, and he was saying that because these are made by a Brazilian company, aren't they?
They are. And, no gags about everybody loving a Brazilian.
Very well finished too. And he was saying that they have some Olympic wins under their belt. Some of their pellets in the pistol shooting arena have won Olympic medals. So it's not to be sniffed at.
Yeah. No, I think they do. I think it's an exceptionally light pistol pellet that I off the top of my head, I think it's picked up an Olympic gold. So they've got some pedigree behind it.
Been shooting the 2.2s.
Oh right,
in the 177. So they do a light which is 15.89 grains, which I think is sort of kind of standard weight really for a 2.2, and then some heavies that are 18.13. And although the 177s are amazing value for money, I think these are $9.99 for 250 for 500. It's the same price for 250 of the 2.2s, but that's while the 177s are amazing value for money, the 2.2s are pretty much on a par with other top
about what you'd expect
pellets.
For a top end pellet.
Yeah, and I found them, like you, really really good. I ran them through I ran through a Daystate Wolverine R. I ran through an FX DRS as well. And I put the heavyweight ones through an FX Impact FAC. And, similar kinds of grips. I didn't bring any show and tell targets, unfortunately. But, tight groups is certainly as good, if not better, than most other pellets that I use. And, very impressed. I'm usually a little bit of a pellet snob, to be honest. And if it's not the brand that I've been using for a million years, then I'm suspicious of it. But
me too. And it is difficult to embrace a new pellet when you've got one that you've been using for a long time. And which is why I was a little bit dismissive initially. But I am impressed, and I would certainly add them to the list of sort of go-to quality domed pellets to try with your gun. And you've been trying more than I have, and I would say I think there are something like 80 variants of rifle pellet when you take into account their weights, calibers, different designs, different head sizes. I think there's 80 to choose from, and the iHunter website, iHunter.co.uk, I believe that lists all of them. Whether it's a psychological thing or not, it's nice to see a foam disc in there as well, because when they've been in transit, they've not been smashing around. They've all been wedged, and in fact, open the tin and look in there. They looked very, very tidy pellets too.
Yeah, clean, and they're not. Sometimes I think manufacturers, when they're looking to make a name for themselves or break into a market, and iHunter's been around for a long time, but you get these kind of weird and wonderful designs with ridges on and pointy bits and hollow points, and But at the end of the day, a good quality domed roundhead pellet just does the business. And and a rabbit is going to be no less dead with a roundhead pellet through it as it is with a pointy pellet or one with ridges or something, if it's in the right place.
That's right. So, I always say rabbits aren't snobbish about pointed pellets or hollow points. They're not prejudiced when they hit them in the head. And if a quality domed pellet is good enough for the sort of pinnacle of field target shooting, then I would assume they're more than good enough for us.
Yeah. The other thing I like was these little sample packs.
I was going to say, because I alluded pretty quickly to the fact that not every pellet is the same through every barrel, but if you can buy a few of these without breaking the bank, and I think there's 40 in that little tin, and obviously it specifies the variety, obviously the caliber, the weight, and the head size. In fact, on about the different specs of the pellet, I had a quick look when Adrian first mentioned them. I had a look on the iHunter website, and I think there's something mental like 600 different types of airgun pellet on there. And for each pellet, they list practically every piece of information you could want, including length and ballistic coefficient on the website. And you can also refine your search to narrow it down to the specific qualities that you're looking for. So, no, I've got to say, I'm glad I had a look. I'm glad I gave them a try.
Yeah, and these are only £2 or £3 a tin as well, which, if you are going through, and let's face it, pellet testing can sometimes be a frustrating and expensive process. But, £2 or £3, you're going to get 40, 50 pellets. So for the same price as buying a tin of pellets, you're getting all these different varieties to help you find the pellet for your rifle. So, yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, no, I was well impressed with them, and I think if anybody tuning into this wants to give them a go, it's iHunter.co.uk, and if I've got my act together, I'll put a link in the description as well.
So what else have you been up to then, Matt?
That for me, like I said, I've been getting ambitious about the ratting and probably a little bit overeager with that. Heading out a bit sooner than I should have been. They're not really on my farms yet. I think once the maize harvest is in, the times get a bit tougher. They'll be turning up, and obviously then I'll be getting out and doing the night shooting, which, looking on your desk and talking about kit, looks like you're getting excited about it as well. What have you got there?
Yeah, well, this is something that I bought with my own hard-earned cash. It's the new DNT thermnight. I've been using the DNT Zulus for quite a while, which is a digital day-night IR scope, and really liked it. Nice and compact, good sight picture. Got a rangefinder on it, got a ballistic calculator, all the toys. And then, this came out with. So this is a digital day scope, an infrared IR night scope, and it's also a thermal scope. So it's all three of those different sighting options wrapped into one scope. And the best thing about it is you can choose. So if you're in day mode, color day mode during the day, obviously, you can, at the press of a button, you can swap over to the thermal image instantly. So all of a sudden you've got a thermal spotter. And the same thing if you're shooting in the IR image at night, you can press a button that will swap you over to thermal as well. So again, you've got a spotter, and you can also use the scope as a thermal scope. Has a reticle on it as well. And you can also, there's so many different modes in it, and I'm just kind of working my way around it. But you can also have like a dual mode, and you're able to put a picture-in-picture image on the main screen, and that will be the opposite to whatever you're using on the main picture. So you might be shooting in color day mode. Your picture-in-picture in the top left, top middle, or top right of the main picture will be the thermal image. And press of a button, you'll turn into thermal on the main picture, and the little picture-in-picture will be the day image. So really, really useful. It sounds quite complicated, but it's really not. It's like any other digital scope. Once you've used it a few times and you've got your head around where the buttons are, you start kind of pushing them like Liberace on speed, and it's really good. And I've been using I still use a thermal spotter, and I have been for years, to be honest, and they're fantastic. I think, having used this a few times, I don't think I would use this as a spotter, as a thermal spotter all the time, because it's just tiring and awkward having to hold a gun and point it around, and also at the end of the day, you're waving a rifle around as well to spot. So I think in that situation, I still use the handheld, and I spot with the handheld. But where it's really useful is if let's say you're in the IR mode, and you spotted a rabbit through your handheld, and you think, right, it's 30, 40 meters over there. You put your thermal down, you pick your rifle up, and that rabbit has moved 10 yards or something, and all of a sudden you can't see it through the IR. And so you put your gun down again, and you pick up your thermal and you relocate it, and that can go on and on and on. With this, you just press a button, turns it into the thermal image, and all of a sudden you've got a thermal spotter in your rifle scope. So very, very impressive, and has a laser rangefinder, has a ballistic calculator as well, which actually works really well. I've always been a bit skeptical of them, to be honest, but I set this up, and it worked. At a sort of 40, 50 meters. I've got it on an AGT Vixen at the moment. This is my own rifle. This is a 30-foot-pound 2.2 rifle, and I've been shooting rabbits at 50 meters using the ballistic calculator. No trouble at all. Records footage and all the rest of it. Yeah, isn't impressive. And also, I think it's a penny under a pound or under £1,000. So it's still $1,000, but there's an awful lot of tech in there, and you can spend an awful lot more than £1,000 to get half of that. So
sure,
that's
sure.
what I've been playing with.
So you've got your thermal, your night vision, your color day, and in fact, those advantages. I mean, I've not used this yet, but the advantages that you mentioned, that was what I was thinking, was not so much using it as a spotter, because I don't like the thought of waving guns around. Also, I tend to feel a bit groggy if I'm swinging around through a narrow view. But to use it when you move across to your gun sight and still be able to pick up that thermal heat signature and not be sort of wondering where you'd spotted it, that sounds brilliant to me. I've used the Zulus a lot, and I can vouch for the simplicity because I quickly get fed up with kit that's too complicated to use.
Yeah.
It didn't take me long to master the Zulus. I even mastered the ballistic calculator on it, which is that's saying something for me. So that it sounds like a brilliant piece of kit.
Yeah. And I was shooting with it. Go on.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say, Rich, sorry to butt in, and I don't know whether this was what you're about to move on to, or whether you told me in strict confidence. But I know that one thing when you're using this sort of tech, you have to be mindful of is to have the zero in the correct profile.
Yes.
Would you like to share that one with us?
Yeah. So I went shooting rabbits yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And I thought, all excited to use this new piece of kit on rabbits on my permission that have been giving me dozens of shots. And lo and behold, after about literally 10 minutes in the hide, a squirrel pops up, 25 meters away. I thought, here we go, first one in the bag. And I missed it, by a mile. And I thought that's weird. Perhaps it's just a duff pellet. And then about 10 minutes later, another squirrel appeared. And it was sort of sat in some kind of undergrowth. And I took the shot at that, and the pellet hit the undergrowth about 18 inches high and left. And I thought, oh, God. And I'd spent ages zeroing this the day before, 30 meters, and it was spot on. So I thought, oh, God, perhaps I've put a duff one here, and, it doesn't hold zero. So I went off to another part of the woods, put up a target, and took a shot, and lo and behold, it's grouping lovely, 18 inches high and left. So I went into the zeroing profile to re-zero, and that's when I realised that instead of being on the profile A, the one I'd zeroed on, I was on profile E, which I hadn't even touched. God knows I must have been mucking about with the buttons and left it on E. So I was actually shooting on a profile that hadn't been zeroed. So I think, lesson learned. It's good to play with these things when you first get them to get used to the buttons, but make sure you leave it in the state that you want to leave it in when you finish playing around, because that cost me 2 squirrels. But what I did find with this was really, really good. Sat in a hide, looking out for squirrels, is being able to just, if you think you sense something moving, being able to sort of poke that button and go into the thermal mode and confirm, there is a thing there. You don't know whether it might be a bird or a mouse or a squirrel or something, but instantly it puts you on your alert, so you can see squirrels before you would normally see them. And I shot 2 or 3 that I saw kind of mooching around in some sort of undergrowth that I wouldn't have seen before, and I was able to get myself ready and be on the correct profile and shoot them. So very impressive.
It sounds good, and it sounds like it's not just tech for the sake of tech. The way you've described it, it sounds like it's got a use, and you're proving that. And just to reassure you, I've done the same thing with those profiles. I did it on the garden range once. I did it on my shooting in the confines of the garden, where I use usually like a big 18-inch or 2-foot patio slab as my sort of super safe backstop. And thank goodness, whenever I start shooting on the garden range, I always start really close. So if something is out, it hasn't gone way out. And I was scratching my head thinking, like, how has this setup had such a wallop? What's gone wrong that's knocked it so far off of zero? And then when you stop panicking, calm down and work through it in a sensible way, quickly realise you've got it set up on a completely different profile than you need for the kit you're using.
I just took the view that, what is more likely to be the idiot here? The expensive piece of technology that a group of people have worked months, years on developing, or me? And when I kind of took that approach, I realised it was me that was doing something wrong, and then
it's usually the nut behind the trigger. That's the first place to start.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, let's really good battery time as well.
Oh, that actually, before we move on, I was going to ask you about runtime. What's the setup with batteries on it?
So I was using it obviously without the IR torch on, as an integrated IR torch, because I was shooting during the day, and I was putting it into standby in between shots. But I probably got 6 hours of shooting before it conked out, and you get 2 batteries, 650 batteries with it. So plenty of time, and they're cheap as anyway to buy. So yeah, but a good 5 or 6 hours, I would say. Probably less at night
Yeah.
with the IR torch, but yeah.
And like you say, they're relatively affordable, so you can stuff your pockets with them and go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Well, look, we'll move on to a couple of questions from viewers, listeners, readers.
Yeah.
But before we do, I better remind everybody to grab a copy of Airgun World. Latest issue looks like that. Better still, take out a subscription at airgun-world.com. It will save you money. And in fact, we've also got a further discount for podcast listeners. There should be a link to that in the description. And that subscription to the magazine also includes shooting insurance. So do check it out. You've got the first question to kick us off, Rich.
Yeah, so this came from Gary Thompson, who's a friend of mine on Facebook, actually. We never met in person, but he's a Facebook friend. And we were chatting last night. And he asked, if for some reason you had to give up all your modern equipment, for financial or health reasons, but you had the chance to start out airgun hunting again, would you start with good second-hand stuff and some basic equipment, or would you shoot as often as you do currently and still enjoy it? So would you go all in again and buy new stuff, or would you be happy with second-hand?
If money was the key concern, I think I'd have no hesitation with going second hand, because if you get it right, you can pick up some amazing bargains, especially if you're a member of a club where club shooters like to update their kit frequently. Some amazing bargains to pick up. So do you know what? Sort of moving on to asking about, would I go more often and would it make my shooting simpler? My romantic notion is that it would be great to start from the beginning again, simplify it, make more time, relish my shooting more. I'll bet you any money you'd be seduced by the same kit as we have been, and very quickly, if money became that it was no longer a serious restriction, I reckon I'd quickly be going up the same tech tree again, a more sophisticated PCP, night vision, thermal. So yes, my notion is that it would be great to start at the sort of with the really simplified kit, but I fear I'd end up where I am now anyway. What about you?
Well, it's an interesting thing, because I've bought a load of guns secondhand, and touch wood, I've never had an issue. I tend to go for, certainly with Springers, rifles that on the outside have been well cared for, so they're not rusty, the stock isn't bashed about, the bluing looks good on them, and what have you, because pretty much you can almost fix any internal issue with a Springer for quite little cost. Let's say, I would have to pay someone who knows what they're doing with it to do it, but Springer issues can be addressed. And I've got probably half a dozen Springers behind me, and I bought them all secondhand, apart from one that I've owned for years, my HW80. If budget is an issue, do I buy a really good used Springer, or do I buy a more expensive but basic PCP? What's your advice? And I've got some cheap PCPs, and they're great, and they shoot really, really well. I think my experiences with the sort of the more budget end of the market is that you can get a very, very good one, but you might get one that's not quite so good. So I think there's more kind of variation just in the sort of the quality control and the engineering in affordable PCPs, and same with Springers. But I'm more comfortable buying a good top of the range secondhand Springer than I am a sort of mid-range PCP. And so I've been fortunate; I haven't had any bad experiences, but I always feel like I'm taking more of a gamble with the PCP.
It's a difficult one, because I often hear from people that are maybe starting out and that they're on a really tight budget. And again, you know that if you go for that used Springer, it's going to be a quality. Well, you're going to be able to afford better. Start again. You're going to get better quality for your money. Say you've got a £400 budget, a used Springer, you'll be able to get a really good one that will last you ages with relatively minimal servicing. But shooting at accurately still has the same limitations. You've still got to be a good shot to shoot well with a recoiling spring gun. So the complicated flip side is that cheap PCP will probably be easier to shoot accurately with more quickly, but it won't last you as long. So it's a it's a real horses for courses. What do you want from that gun? What do you want from your shooting? How long do you want it to last? I think it's a really tricky one to answer with any sort of definitive answer.
Funny enough, I was having a similar conversation with Adrian at iHunter the other day, and we were talking about all sorts of stuff because he likes to chat about as much as I do, and we're talking about affordable PCPs, and a lot of guns coming out of Turkey and Eastern Europe that are very, very good, but they're priced at that mid-market range. And we both said, what's going to be interesting is seeing what those same rifles will be like in 10 years' time, because no one has got one that's 10 years old yet. Now, you could take the view that, well, it doesn't really matter. It was a cheap rifle. I'll buy another one. But, I've got 15 or 20, 30, 40-year-old rifles behind me. I have no reason to believe that those rifles won't be just as good as they are now in 10 years' time. But that's the unknown factor at the moment.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that, the Virak HW95 that you bought secondhand will be as good in 10 years' time as it was the day you bought it. Yeah. The relatively cheap Turkish PCP, which was you were shooting drawing pins at 30 meters that you probably couldn't hit with the Virak, probably won't be giving you good service 10 years later. Yeah. But I don't know that because, like you said, we haven't had these guns that long yet. But
isn't it? Yeah,
it is.
I think you're right. And I think the other thing is also, if your 15-year-old HW starts getting a little bit ragged, pop it into a professional tuner. I've had loads of guns going to Lynn Lewington at Arc Tuning. And what that guy doesn't know about an HW just isn't worth knowing. And they can always be brought back if the basic, if the barrel's bent or something, then the barrel's bent. But if they're half decent, then they can be still made to be very, very good, in my experience.
Yeah, the simplicity is their strength as well, isn't it? So right, let's move on to the next question. This one's from Tony Woodward, and it's a very relevant question. We've been talking about ammo and trying out different pellets and things. I've paraphrased his question slightly, but he talks about newcomers asking about which pellet they should use with which gun, and it's a question that you often see asked on social media. And I've bought this air gun. What pellet's the best one to use through it? And quite often, some so-called expert will say, "Well, I've got that gun, and I use this pellet," and so on and so forth. Give it a try. But we all know that there's this kind of it's difficult to pin down, but for some reason or other, different air, or even the same air gun off the same production line, but different models, different serial numbers, shoot better with different pellets. So Tony suggests that maybe some careful research should give us a better understanding of what the important factors are, and therefore help us to narrow down the perfect pellet match, and therefore save us money and time in terms of the experimentation to find that fantasy perfect pellet. What do you reckon in terms of us ever being able to pin down the factors that actually dictate which pellet works best with which gun?
I think for me, part of the fun is finding that pellet and doing the testing. I think you can narrow it down enormously by just picking the well-known quality brands, and I would add these guys to it now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than sort of, don't buy cheap pellets because there's a reason why they're cheap. And I can honestly say that just by sticking to the well-known brands, I've rarely gone through 2 or 3 different makes of pellets before I found a pellet that works just right. I think the other thing is also, at the end of the day, you might have a fantastic rifle that costs a lot of money and is very accurate, but so much of shooting is in your head, and it could well be that you put a magazine of brand X through your rifle, and you've just had a bad 10 minutes and they haven't shot well. You might get in your mind then that those pellets just are terrible in your rifle. So I think if you are pellet testing, give each brand a really good try. I said before, good quality roundhead pellets is the way to start. Pick the popular brands and go for them and give it a good try. And there's other factors, obviously, with a brand new gun, and obviously, often you're in this situation because it's a brand new gun. Clean the barrel, because they do get shipped out with all sorts of muck and gunk in the barrel to protect them. So give the barrel a couple of pull-throughs. Also, give the rifle plenty of time to lead up as well. And also, just give yourself enough time to be able to settle in with your gun, I would say. Javier,
I think that's sound advice.
Do you go through huge tins and tins of pellets to pellet test, or do you go to?
Yeah, I mean, as you've said, yeah, exactly. There's always a few go-tos. I think there's probably like 4 or 5 decent roundhead pellets, and like you said, we've now used these rifle RTX that we'll probably add to the list.
Yeah.
That one of them is probably going to be the one. And over the years, I've accrued so many tins of pellets that I've got quite a variety that I can dip into and treat as samples. I mean, luckily we're now in the position that we can buy samples too. But to get back to the original question, I don't actually think that you could pin it down with research and narrow it down much more than we have. I think if you could, somebody would have done it already. And I just think there are so many variables, because even with the same gun, there could be a tiny difference in power output. Even the speed at which that pulse of air is released, there could be tiny little anomalies inside the barrel, in the rifling. Different, even it just goes on and on and on. I think the best example of that I've ever seen is more than 20 years ago now. My good mate Kev Hawker and I both bought Air Arms S400s from the same gun shop on the same day, and they were, if they weren't sort of consecutive serial numbers, they were incredibly close. And those guns both had pretty different pellet preferences. So if we'd had the formula, it wouldn't have taken both of us, or it would have taken both of us to the same pellet, presumably, but it would have worked for one of us and not the other. So it's such a dark art.
And just even the 30 feet per second difference between two of the same rifle just makes the resonance in the barrel slightly different. The rifling on one barrel might be a little bit deeper, cut better with a newer tool than on another barrel. And it's not to say that one's bad, or good. They're just different. And I think the other thing is also, before you start wondering about the quality of the pellets in your gun, do basic things like do a chronograph test and make sure that your gun is running consistently. Because if your gun's up and down in terms of power output, then it doesn't really matter what you're shooting. But yeah, I wish someone, Tony, if you can find that magic formula, put it in a tin, and ask whatever you want for it, because I think you'll be beating people away from your door.
Yeah, I think so. I think the pellet industry would hate him, because they must sell a heck of a lot to people who are trying to find the right one. Look, that's probably a good place to wrap it up, Rich. So thanks for your time. Thanks again to Crackshot, the podcast sponsors. That they're based in Newton Abbot, or you can check them out. Their website is crackshot.uk, and they are also on Facebook. I'll remind you again to have a look at the Airgun World subscription offers. That's airgun-world.com. The subscription includes shooting insurance, and I will pop a link in the show description. We will be back again in a fortnight. In the meantime, enjoy your shooting and stay safe.